Hello and welcome back to the Smartbuild implementation series. We are in part number 23. We're going through updating your pricing, and I'll just be talking about how to set your pricing in place, but also how to mark it up in a job and just pricing in a few different ways. So one thing, like in a job that we have here, if you go to your job review, there's a couple things when it comes to the price. You can double click on the name of the job and it will hide your price. You can double click again and it comes back. You've got your summary. But also when you're in these areas and you double click on the price, it expands out your pricing so you can actually see the cost and the price. So in this particular project, we have a cost and a price, and it's not the same. So when you go to the summary tab and you double click, you get to see what that average markup is. And that average markup, again, is just showing us what the average markup is of all of our cost and all of our price, and then the difference and what that average is across the board. And you can mark this up here, and that's one way that you can mark up your projects. The end goal is always to have a total price in Smartbuild with the complete everything that you need added up, so you can use Smartbuild as a quoting tool and quickly and easily give bids to customers. With that being in mind, we obviously want this to be our selling price or the final price. So going back to the pricing page and where this all starts from, so in the settings pricing area, you go down to pricing. You've got all these different tabs, every category of items that you have set up in your catalog that you're using in your Smartbuild database. And if we just start with this first item, this LVL 11, and you see the running foot price, this 915, and we have a part cost of 915, a price of 915, and a markup. And if we would put a 10% markup in here, the table would automatically update and you would see that. So it's actually recommended to set your part cost and then having a markup percentage and your selling price in here. While we know that some companies use it a bit different, they actually put the retail in here, and that's fine too, where you're just using retail across the board and your cost and price are retail, suggested retail, and then the users can still mark it up in the job or mark it down from there. So if you're operating at retail, maybe you're always in a safe zone. So again, just on the markup side, but when it comes to updating pricing, sure, you could go through here and just manually type in each price and each cost, which it would take a while if you have, several hundred or thousands of part numbers. So that's why we have this upload and download feature that you can work in Excel, work in a CSV file, download the data, manipulate it, and re-upload it. Or if you have a point of sale system, QuickBooks, Paradigm, several of those, and you can export a pricing file or a price book and then just come into Smartbuild and upload it. So I'm going to start out with the simplest version here. So we have columns, and I'm going to pick CSV, and I'm going to just do cost and price, and I'll download this. So when we look at this file, I'll go ahead and open it up here. So looking at it here, we have a vendor SKU, material description basically, and the cost and price. So again, if you're wanting to work in Excel and update it this way, just drag this out of the way a bit here, resize this window so we can see both. So a couple things to note: you can just upload a new cost, and you could just delete the price column, and during the upload, it would just update the cost and the price, and that's one way that you could update your price. Or you could just delete the cost column and update your price, and it'll work that way. And then another way is if you download this table and do cost and markup. Here's another way to look at it. So we'll download it and take a look at that version. And if you're used to doing a cost and a certain percentage, so you know that all your lumber you want to update at a certain percentage or whatever, maybe that's the way you do it. So looking at this version, we have a cost and a markup percentage. So this here makes it a little bit easier if you're just wanting to update a certain category a certain percentage. So in this case, if I wanted to update lumber maybe 10%, I could simply put in a 10 in here and drag this down. And again, just drag it down, just copying and pasting all the way through all of my lumber category. And when you do that, then again, go to File, save the file, update it, and then go into your upload, choose the file, find it in your files, and upload and push it up that way. So again, that's another way that you can do a percentage-based markup. So as you can tell, there's several ways that you can update your pricing. The quickest and most efficient is obviously in the pricing table here with a CSV file. So if you aren't used to working in Excel or haven't worked in Excel, it may help to get some tips or someone that can help you to work in Excel And again, the thing to remember is if you're uploading part cost and the price, then you need to delete this markup column from your upload. And the main time that's a problem is if you download all here. And we had this happen in the past where someone would try to download this file and they would leave the markup column there. So I'll just show you really quickly what that looks like here. We'll open up the file. So we have all of the columns that are stored in the pricing table. You have to enable editing if you're in protected view. And now look, so we have a cost and we have a markup and we have a price. So if I were to go through here and just update my prices to a new price, and if I would update this to 10, this is not automatically updating this markup column in this sheet. So these three numbers here do not agree with each other in Excel. Basically, this cost marked up 1,000% does not equal $10. So again, you just have to make sure that if you're going to use the all file so that you can see your materials a little bit better, you do have to delete either the markup column or you have to delete your price column and just let your cost and markup drive your final price. So again, maybe a little bit confusing once you get started. You can reach out to our support team if you have issues. But the next part of this that I wanted to cover was setting up builders and their pricing. So we have a lot of companies that set up their pricing, and then as they start distributing Smartbuild, they get builders set up under them. And a builder may be a contractor, someone that is using their pricing or their parts and pieces for their Smartbuild version. Basically, they're plugged into this same data. Now you'll notice when I look at this new company here, it has some extra columns that we did not have before. Now, one concern that suppliers have is, oh, I have a contractor and he's going to log in and he's going to see my supplier cost. You don't have to worry. As long as he's logging in his account, he will never see the supplier cost and the markup, supplier markup. That's only on the admin side, and it's only from this administrator's table. So again, the first column that they would see, or that a contractor would see when they log in, is this part cost, which is their cost. So again, the same process applies. If we download one of these files, let's say that we sign up a contractor and we're trying to figure out how do we set his pricing in place. We could download the supplier cost and their cost, or supplier cost and their markup, either one, work in Excel or CSV. Just download the file and we'll open it up here in a second. So it takes just a second to download that. We'll open it up and take a look. So here we have a little bit different type of data. So we have the vendor SKU again, and then we have a supplier cost, and then we have a supplier markup. So if you say that these are your costs in Smartbuild, and that if this is retail, for example, and you have a contractor that you're setting up and he gets 5% below retail, you can actually put a negative number in there. That's just one example. Now, if you have your Smartbuild set up to where this is your true cost, then, and it's a contractor, he may be buying at 10% above your cost. So again, that's just another way that you can see how it's really easy to do this. And then you can scroll down, and if you see these columns, they're organized by category. So all the lumber's first, and then I think it goes into trim. So you can do different percentages for different categories. And again, you can work through it that way. And you can expand this out if you want to see the material name. So again, that's pretty straightforward. You have the same tool there where you can download all if you do want to see all the data. The one rule that I mentioned earlier, that applies too, where you cannot try to upload data that does not match up, where the numbers just do not match up. And again, I'll explain that one more time. So when I open this file, you'll see I have a supplier cost and a supplier markup percentage. And then I have, expand this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So I have a supplier cost. We'll expand these out so you can see what they look like. Supplier markup and a markup. So if I want to, again, back to the 10% or the 5%, whatever you're marking up your lumber, we're just using lumber as an example. If I'm marking it up 10% and I try to just work in Excel and copy this down and mark up that column 10%, and I just save the file as is and try to upload it, it will not work because I have a cost and I have a percentage that does not equal out. So again, I need to either delete this column or I need to delete this column and leave the cost column. So you can't have both if you don't do the work to make these match up. And sometimes it could be pennies that it's off, but it is basic math, and they need to add up if you're going to use them. So again, that kind of gets into the builder setup, not nearly used by everyone, but it is there. One last thing related to builders is, over time you're maintaining your database, and if you're utilizing vendor SKUs or vendor descriptions here, over time SKUs may change. We understand parts change, and builders can actually have a different SKU. Maybe they've put in a different SKU for a certain item. They overrode your SKU that's in here. And the thing that can happen over time is with vendor SKUs, they can start to get out of sync, or the descriptions they can get out of sync from your builders to all yours. And occasionally, if you're changing a bunch of vendor SKUs, and again, this example I'm showing here, it's not using very many. There are some of these that are filled in, but if I would update this vendor SKU here, you can see this 2410 SPF1 it's not updated on my builder account. So when I go down and find this item, that one did not get updated. But if I wanted to update this, I could take that button that we have there on the homepage, this sync vendor SKUs and descriptions, and you could click sync. And it's only going to sync the framing category. What does that mean? Well, it only does this tab. So you do have to go through each tab and sync each tab if you're making multiple changes. So again, that's just a really quick walkthrough of updating pricing. There's a lot of different ways it can be done. We even have some people that automate it through their API, where every evening their API calls our server, updates the latest, pushes the latest pricing in. So when the sales guys come in the morning, they have the new price up to date. So again, that can be done also. You may have to have a developer and speak to our support team on that if you're wanting to get that set up. But the most common would be a simple data file transfer upload from our settings pricing menu. So I hope that helps everyone, and have a good day.